Imagine a single moment in history, a clash of armies, a decision made in the chaos of war that rewrote the future of empires. What if the ideas we cherish, the languages we speak, even the borders of our countries were all shaped not in a palace, but on a battlefield? Today, we're diving into 10 ancient battles that didn't just end wars. They changed the course of civilization itself. Get ready to walk among warriors and emperors in the shadows of blood-soaked fields where history was forged. This was the dawn of military history. The Battle of Megiddo is the first war we have an actual account of carved into the walls of ancient Egypt. Pharaoh Thutmose III wasn't just a warrior, he was a tactician. Facing a massive alliance of Canaanite kings, he chose the unexpected, a narrow mountainous pass, so dangerous that even his generals protested, but he pressed on. His gamble paid off. He took the enemy by surprise, forced them into retreat, and besieged the city of Megiddo for 7 months before victory. This battle established Egypt as the dominant power in the Near East and set the tone for military strategy for centuries to come. It was the moment when war became an extension of politics and when pharaohs learned to think like generals. The Persian Empire had never been defeated until Marathon. The Athenians knew they were outnumbered, more than 2 to 1, but retreat wasn't an option. They believed in something the Persians didn't, the right to govern themselves. As the Persian cavalry boarded ships to flank them, the Athenians struck fast. They sprinted across open fields, smashed into the enemy lines, and overwhelmed the invaders using a now famous pincer maneuver. It was a total rout, and the legacy? Athens not only saved itself, but lit the spark for what would become classical Greek civilization. Art, architecture, philosophy, everything from Socrates to democracy itself might never have happened without this one stunning victory. Thermopylae wasn't a win, but it was never meant to be. It was a delay tactic. The Persians returned with a colossal army, some say hundreds of thousands. Greece was not united, but King Leonidas of Sparta and just 300 of his elite warriors stood in a narrow pass to buy time. They held for 3 days against wave after wave of Persian attacks. Every soldier knew they would die. They fought anyway. Eventually, a traitor revealed a hidden path. Leonidas was surrounded. Still, he stayed. Though defeated, their sacrifice inspired the Greek city-states to rally and ultimately defeat Persia at sea and land. The Battle of Thermopylae became a legend, etched into the soul of Western civilization as the gold standard of courage against impossible odds. Alexander the Great never lost a battle, but Gaugamela was his greatest triumph. Outnumbered, outmatched, facing war elephants, scythed chariots, and Darius III's massive army, Alexander relied on unmatched discipline and innovative tactics. He feinted to the right, pulled the Persian cavalry out of position, then smashed into the gap with his elite companion cavalry. The psychological pressure cracked Darius, who fled the field. Once the king abandoned the fight, the Persian lines collapsed. The victory shattered the largest empire the world had ever seen. And it didn't just hand Alexander a throne, it set the stage for the fusion of East and West, blending Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Indian cultures in a way that still resonates in language, science, and art today. This was the Roman Republic's darkest day and Hannibal's greatest masterpiece. Hannibal's Carthaginian army was smaller, but he used terrain, timing, and trickery to craft the perfect trap. He let the center of his line buckle, drawing in the massive Roman army. Then, his cavalry circled back and slammed into them from behind. The Romans, 80,000 strong, were packed so tightly they couldn't even raise their swords. It was a massacre. Nearly 60,000 Romans died. Rome was devastated, but it didn't collapse. Instead, it rebuilt smarter and stronger, eventually defeating Carthage in later wars. Cannae remains one of the most studied battles in military history because it shows how brilliance and strategy can overcome raw numbers. This was the long-awaited rematch. Rome had learned. General Scipio Africanus had studied Hannibal's tactics and used them against him. At Zama, Scipio neutralized Hannibal's war elephants by letting them charge through specially created lanes in the Roman line. Then, he engaged in a brutal infantry fight, finally using his superior cavalry to encircle the Carthaginian army, just like Hannibal had done at Cannae. This wasn't just a military victory, it was the end of Carthage as a major power and the beginning of Rome's total dominance over the Mediterranean. Without Zama, there may never have been a Roman Empire. The Roman Republic died not on land, but at sea. Mark Antony and Cleopatra were icons of the ancient world, but their alliance posed a threat to Octavian, Julius Caesar's heir. At Actium, Octavian's fleet trapped their ships in the Ionian Sea. Cleopatra and Antony attempted a breakout, but their forces broke ranks. They fled, leaving their fleet to be destroyed. This naval battle gave Octavian the power to return to Rome as a hero. He renamed himself Augustus and became Rome's first emperor. Actium wasn't just a turning point. It marked the transformation of Rome from a republic to an empire that would shape Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East for centuries. It was supposed to be a routine march, but it ended in disaster. Roman legions, led by General Varus, were led deep into Germanic territory by Arminius, a chieftain they believed was loyal. Then came the ambush. Over several days in thick forest and rain, the Romans were slaughtered. 3 entire legions, nearly 20,000 men, were wiped out. The psychological shock was enormous. Rome halted its expansion into Germania. The Rhine River became a permanent frontier, and perhaps most importantly, it preserved a distinct Germanic identity that would later play a central role in shaping medieval Europe. Rome had begun to crumble from within, and Adrianople exposed the cracks. The Eastern Roman Emperor Valens tried to contain the Goths, who had fled their homeland from the Huns, but corruption and neglect had turned the refugees into rebels. Valens underestimated them. He attacked without waiting for reinforcements. The Gothic cavalry crushed the Roman flanks, and Valens himself was killed in the chaos. It was the first time a Roman emperor died in battle against a barbarian force, and it marked the beginning of the end for the Western Roman Empire. From here, Rome was no longer the center of the world. It was a crumbling relic of what once was. Fought on the banks of a raging river in what is now Pakistan, Hydaspes was unlike anything Alexander the Great had faced before. His opponent, King Porus, brought elephants into the battlefield, towering beasts that trampled men and terrified horses. Alexander crossed the flooded river under cover of night, outmaneuvered Porus, and struck with precision. Despite the win, the battle was grueling and costly. Porus fought with such honor that Alexander not only spared him, he gave him even more territory. But this was also the turning point. Alexander's troops refused to go further east. Hydaspes wasn't just a victory, it was the beginning of the end of Alexander's conquests, and a powerful example of how respect between enemies could reshape borders and ideas. From blood-soaked plains to stormy seas, these battles weren't just clashes of power, they were the milestones of history. Each one left ripples that would shape nations, empires, and even the world we live in today. Some forged heroes, others sparked downfalls, but all of them proved that in the fires of war, the future is often born. If you enjoyed this journey through the ancient world, like, comment, and subscribe. History isn't a list of dates, it's the story of how we got here, and it all began with a battle.